right? So most of the subversion of tropes in our story in the Galvorn saga is with the intention of making this story fresh and the characters and the fantasy elements fresh. From the elves being a warrior race to like the dwarves using knowledge as like currency, or even our dwarves having Russian accents instead of the typical like Scottish or Irish accents is an intentional subversion. So what is the purpose of subverting? If you're subverting it just to subvert it, I think your audience will recognize that and it will hurt your credibility.
Hello, folks, and welcome to Author Adjacent, a show about the journey from hobbyist writer to professional author. I am your host, Michael Vadney, and today I am sitting with returning guest, one half of the dynamic duo known as Michael Melwasul, co-authors of the Paragon Exordium. Welcome back to the show, Michael.
Thanks for having me back.
Of course. Last time we explored your author journey, talked about your co-authorship, your hats, and the various things that you've been up to. But this time we're going to be digging into subverting tropes. And the first thing that I wanted to ask you is, why did you pick this topic when I asked you for one?
Because I think it's a fascinating topic. It's just tropes in general. Especially in the online book space, are very popular to the point of being the focus of a lot of marketing and even the focus of a lot of writing. Because when I started writing my book, I saw trope as a dirty word. So with our world, it was like every opportunity, like, oh, we're approaching a trope. How do we subvert that? How do we change it, make it unique and original? Now it's like, oh, people want specific tropes, so we're going to write our entire series around those tropes, with that being the point of the story.
Tropes are interesting because like people like the familiar, but they also want it to be different, but
Right.
not too different, but different enough. It's an interesting balance that you kind of have to strike with them. But I love tropes. I think they're amazing building blocks. They're a great place to start with a story, but then as you build onto it and figure out what's actually going to happen, you subvert them, which is what we're going to be talking about today. But first, before we get too much into that, not everybody is familiar with the term trope. How would you describe what a trope is?
Oh God, I should have looked up the definition before we
It's
started.
all right. I
It's
have one if you need it.
I mean, I would consider a trope a repeated a piece of storytelling that is repeated enough to be instantly recognizable.
You nailed it in one.
Yeah,
Like
you'd think I was an author or
that's
something.
that is exactly what it is. Um, I think the reason some people think trope is a dirty word is because it's often used as a synonym for cliche, which is
Yeah,
not exactly the same thing, because a cliche is like it's overused and a predictable element, while a trope is just a recognizable convention. And I know that just sounds like very similar words, but
I mean, you could say
it's
they're the light
really,
side and the dark side of each other.
that is a great way to put it.
A cliche is the
Like,
dark side of a trope.
yeah. I think one of the best ways I ever had it explained to me that a cliche is a trope with baggage. Like you
Yeah,
see a cliche and you're like, when you see that cliche, you don't think of just what is happening here. You think of the hundreds or thousands of other copies of that cliche and everything you
right.
hated about those, and then focus that emotional discomfort on it.
I mean, in the same vein, a trope is a cliche with presence.
Oh, that's a good way to put it. I like that.
It's just a matter of how you perceive what they're bringing.
I like that. So you talked about subverting tropes already and like trying really hard to do that within your own work.
Yeah.
Are there any specific tropes that you can recall off the top of your head that you did very intentionally subvert, and how did you do that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the foundational elements of the story where the main character Peter Blair is an intentional subversion of tropes. So in fantasy and epic fantasy, especially, you see a lot of characters that I call it the farm boy trope. It's the farm boy with the magic sword. Farm boy finds magic sword. Farm boy immediately becomes the best at everything because he's probably the chosen one, but he was originally a farm boy. And it's I get it. I get it. I understand why it's popular, but when I was writing, I was like, I am so sick of this concept because a farm boy picks up a magic sword. Farm boy is 9 out of 10 times actually just getting his ass handed to him and not winning the fight. Farm boy, I get why they do usually do well. It's for the story, but then they're like a farm boy is usually going to be pretty healthy and fit already, so they've got that advantage. But I wanted a protagonist who could realistically and perceivably survive an apocalyptic situation and it not feel ham-fisted, right? So that's why we created Peter, Captain Peter Blair. He's a black ops dude, right? So even though he's in this fantasy setting, fantasy apocalypse setting, he has the experience and the know-how and the mentality to be able to realistically survive in these circumstances. And even with that, he gets his ass kicked a lot in the story. He doesn't usually win fights with things he's not prepared for, but he survives them, and that's the key, right? So that was one of the main ones going into our story was like I want to subvert this trope and take a story and have it be grounded in a different way than that.
No, I think you were definitely successful at that. And like you do still see some of like elements of the chosen one, the farm boy and stuff like that in Peter.
Yeah,
But you also learn a lot through the story where like he wasn't the original choice
right,
and just like he is older than a typical farm boy protagonist. Like he's experienced. He's a full-grown adult. He's a
right.
man. Like he has these things in his back pocket. He has lived a life before this moment. When most farm boys, they don't. Like
Yeah,
their life begins when they find the sword.
right, right, exactly.
Also, I just loved that whole. I know we talked about this a little bit in the previous episode, but that whole military band, that like private mercenary group, like based off like the snowflake and everything like that, that was dope.
Yeah, a
Very
little pin
cool
of it.
naming convention. Ah, there you go.
Yeah, the Silent Night
Very good
Warriors.
naming conventions.
Yay!
And yeah, the names and how they use the snowflake symbol like tactically, I thought was like really good world building. I
Thank you,
liked that a lot.
thank you. That's one of my favorite parts. It doesn't get talked about a lot.
Nice. Oh, I don't see why not. It's one of the best parts of the book is that entire band. Uh, but anyways, uh, going back to the tropes and subverting them. When we talk about like subverting a trope, do you see it as like breaking the reader's expectations, or is it kind of just reshaping something to make it more surprising?
I think it depends on your writing style
Okay,
and what you're
say more
trying
about
to
that.
what you're trying to accomplish. Are you because I think one lends itself more to humor than the other.
Mhm.
If you're just trying to do something unexpected, I think the best way to do that is going to be through a farcical or a funny lens. Whereas if you're trying to do something familiar and just make it fresh, that lends itself to more of a serious approach to it.
No, that makes sense. I think humor is one of the difficult things to intentionally plan ahead of time when you're writing.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, but subverting a trope is definitely a. It's almost. How do I want to say this? It's almost like a roadmap of doing it because,
Hmm.
like, if you have this very serious trope, which many tropes are
Right.
very serious and very like it's heavy, it's dark, it's this or that, and adding some like comedic subversion is a really nice way to do that. I think that's something Matt Dinneman really shines
Mm,
with Dungeon Crawler Carl.
yeah.
Don't know if you're familiar, but super fun stuff.
I'm familiar. I haven't read them, but I'm very aware of Dungeon Carl.
As with every one of his cult followers, I do recommend his books. I love them. They're very funny. Um, so, do you think tropes should be challenged then, or are there some tropes that you lean into because they are comforting or familiar? You mentioned at the top of the episode that you tried to subvert as many as you could,
Right.
but were there any that you really leaned into and decided, you know what, I'm going to keep this one?
I mean, yeah, there are some that are unavoidable depending on the type of story you're telling. Like we have an old wizard character. You could argue that's just a trope in and of itself as an old wizard mentor character. But even with our old wizard mentor character, instead of it being an old white dude, it's a older African American dwarf lady. You know, so even
Mhm.
there, we're like embracing the trope because it's a necessary component of fantasy because you need someone who knows what's going on, at least to a
Yeah,
degree, but we wanted to see that character be different from what you typically see that character be. You know,
yeah. That's similar from. Did you ever read the Wheel of Time series?
I tried. I got through the
I
first
don't blame you.
5 books, I think.
Oh, you died in the middle of the slog.
The slog. Listen, I love long books.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's got to be fun. I was not
I
having
get
fun
you.
with those books. I it didn't and this is something that has been without going on too much of a tangent. The
Tangent away.
characters were incredibly boring to me and did not feel like they had any agency,
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying.
which was
Like
like part of the story, I felt like.
yeah.
But like I didn't like them.
I totally get it. I do not blame you. There are certain series that kind of feel like fantasy homework,
Right.
where it's like you kind of read it to know what everyone else is talking about.
Sure.
I personally do like the series, but
Yeah.
I understand why people drop it because like those middle
I
books are
mean, if you
really
make it through
hard.
all 12, you're obligated to. It's Stockholm syndrome at that point.
I've done it twice, so
Oh,
it's
hey,
gotta
okay,
be.
I don't
It's
listen.
a
I've read
powerful
all of One
payoff. That's all I'm
Piece,
gonna
so
say.
like I long
Oh,
is
okay.
long. Like it's not a that's
You
not a
understand
problem
it.
for me. It's got to be
But the reason I brought it up though was because that kind of subversion that you do with this like elderly wizard mentor character,
mhm.
um, that was something that I really liked. A subversion of tropes in the Wheel of Time
Yeah,
was Moraine Damodred.
right,
Like, yes, she is an older woman, but she has the appearance of a very young woman, and she's just this young-looking, powerful woman, as opposed to Gandalf,
right,
because Wheel of Time was just Robert Jordan's Lord of the Rings.
right.
And just that subversion of trope, like you don't even have to go far. The people can still fulfill the same roles and do the same things. Just change it like 20%.
Yeah,
And that's enough for most people.
yeah, or you can flip it on its head, it
Yeah.
just it varies, like, one thing we tried to do, like, I love Tolkien's elves, right? Elves are a very popular f fantasy element, right? And so we're approaching our elves, I'm like, "Okay, how do we make these our elves and make them unique to our world?" And so one of the questions we asked ourselves was it was like, "Well, if a creature is functionally immortal, how does that affect them as a society and as a people?" And the conclusion we came to was like, well, if the only way they die is if they're killed in combat or actively killed, then being unkillable in combat is going to be the foundation of their entire culture. Yeah, you're essentially immortal. So like they're going to be a very war focused, war enhanced culture that focuses on being able to defend themselves and defend others and take their enemies out. And that's I think a pretty far distinction from the aloof immortal beings who just keep their hands off until like the last second. These hells are very hands on, but they also look at things with that same kind of lens, but it's shifted.
No, your elves are very interesting. They have a lot of good world building around them. Like it's a lot of subtle stuff too. Um, I think the one that really sticks out for me, it comes up in your videos a lot with Lumeni.
Hmm.
Is that how you say it?
Lumeni,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love how they greet each other, and just that simple phrase just says so much about who they are and what their culture is, without even getting into the martial side of it. So it makes them feel very multifaceted while still being very different, subverting the trope of what elves are, which for most people is just, Lord of the Rings, pick them up, put them over here.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think you guys did a great job with that.
Thank you.
That actually led into my next question really well, though, is what is the big difference between a clever subversion and just doing the opposite of a trope?
Mm. I mean, recognizability, right? If you can't recognize it as the thing, then it's not the thing. Like the opposite of a trope would just be something unrecognizable, which people would argue you can't do in writing because every story's been told, which I think is a lazy excuse for people who don't write. Uh, but I think that's it.
I do think. I am a believer in the every story has been told.
Sure.
I don't think every story has been told the same way though.
Yes. Yes.
Like,
And I think that's the key that a lot of people who use that phrase miss. It's
yeah.
thrown out there. Every story has been told. Every story. Well, yeah, but by default, if every story hasn't been told the same way or by the same people, then not every story's been told.
Yeah.
Like it's a self defeating statement, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It's nice because when you think about it incorrectly, I feel like it's defeatist.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the same thing. I've talked about this with like friends and stuff like that. The idea of like nothing really matters except for what you decide matters. Nothing
Hmm.
matters. So because nothing matters, you can either be like, oh, nothing I do matters, or
Right.
you can be like, nothing matters. So what I decide is important is important. And it's kind of the same way with like every story has been told.
Right.
That's awesome. That means all these stories that have already been told before, people are loving. And it's because they're different flavors of that same story. And you can do it too.
Yeah, I think that's a much better approach to it.
Welcome to my TED Talk. I'll get off my soapbox now. So, how would you suggest writers balance out subverting tropes without alienating readers then? Because we did mention before that like tropes are comforting. People like to recognize them. They actively seek out
Hmm.
books with those tropes. So how do you make them different enough without alienating your audience that is there for that trope?
Ooh, man. I mean, that depends on genre largely and the individual writer, right? Because if you're a romance author and you advertise all these tropes, and that's why people are reading your stuff because you're a romantasy author, and you don't fulfill any of them, no one's going to run that group of people aren't going to want to read your work, right? So it's I think a balancing act of how far can you take it, right? Versus who is your audience and what are they looking for, right? Like I have in my second book, which isn't out yet, we have a one bed trope, which was put in there to appease a large chunk of my fan base who are more romantasy readers, and they're all going to be very angry with me.
You're anticipating their
They're
fury.
all the beta readers are already angry at me.
And you decided to keep with it
Oh
anyways? You're
yeah, no,
sticking to your guns?
absolutely.
So what led to that decision? Why did you decide to do that instead of leaning into it? Like what was the thought process
It's
there?
funnier.
Or is it like too oh,
It's
okay.
funny. That's it. What happens is funny, and it's realistic. It's
Mhm.
grounded, but the grounded element of it is what makes it funnier.
I do like that. Because your story is interesting because by default being genre blending with this like dystopian magic Lord of the Rings meets Fallout, by default you are automatically diverting yourself away from most tropes.
Mhm,
So it's an interesting story to dissect in that way. Like, oh man, I think the only trope I can really think of that you haven't mentioned already with the mentor
mhm.
that you really stick with, I would say, is the animal companion.
Hmm, okay.
I think that's the only one that I can think of that really like snugs up closely to what we expect.
Yeah,
And it's heartwarming. Like it's very nice. It's very anchoring for everything that is happening around the story.
yeah, yeah, and I
Was that
mean,
an intentional choice?
Hotch just being a character or what element of it?
Uh,
Hotch
just
being
the
the only
element of it
character
of
that has plot armor, which we're making stickers about because people love that.
that is an awesome saying. I am okay with
Yeah,
that.
the dog doesn't die. It's just like we're making like Hotch is the only character in the series who will be there from beginning to end. And here's the funny thing about that: I didn't make that choice. That choice was
Huh?
taken from me. Um, my wife said, "If the dog dies, you die." So the dog's not gonna die. So it's funny you pick up the one thing I was beyond my control.
That's hilarious. Okay, that's good to know. Good origin story. So how did that come about? She was just reading your story like early on and she's like you can't do this. You're not
Yeah,
allowed.
pretty much. Pretty
You
much. I
know,
was like, well,
sometimes we have to listen to our wives.
yeah, I listen. She's an English major. I listen to her all the time. Um, she knows how much I like to hurt my readers, and like she knew, she's like, the people get more attached to an animal than they do to a character.
Oh yeah, that would
She's
do it.
like, you will lose people if you kill this dog, but also I will be so upset that I won't forgive you, right? So
Ooh.
it's a fun. It's also a fun hook, right?
Mhm.
Because I've got this dark world that's full of things, and I say no character is safe because no character is safe because we haven't gotten to the end of the books. No one's safe, right? And so having being like, "Hey, there's also this dog," because I've even got like a little model of him that a fan of mine sculpted. Right,
Oh my
a fan of
god,
mine who's
that's
blind
awesome.
sculpted this, which is just super cool.
What?
Yeah, from the audiobook is she was able to come up with this. Um,
That's awesome.
and so having this as a hook at conventions and stuff, you're like, "Hey, this is also Hot to the dog from the story. He's the only character that is safe." Immediately triggers an emotional response from people I'm talking to instantly. They're like, "Oh, that was gonna be my next question. You've already answered the question, is the dog okay?" Right? So, in a way, we're subverting what you would expect in a story like this. I think most people would expect the dog to be used as emotional manipulation in the story, especially of this genre. It's an apocalypse story. Most of the time, dogs don't make it through an apocalypse story. So even though we're embracing the trope, we are also subverting. It just depends on which genre you look at the book through the lens of, right?
Nope, you're right. I'm thinking of like movies and books, like specifically like I Am Legend.
Hmm.
They always injure like morbidly or kill the dog at the point where it's like the hero is at his lowest and you just gotta kick him a little bit
Yep.
more. Man, is there a single trope that is like safe within your story? I don't think so.
There is one that is a major spoiler. Um,
Then do not tell me.
okay. Well, I mean, it's in book one,
Oh, it's in the
so
first book?
you would be able to know. It's the mentor character.
Oh, that's a good point.
But even
Okay.
with that, I would argue it's because of how that goes down.
This man cannot be stopped. He is a menace to tropes. No trope is safe while he is
There you go.
around.
I'm gonna put that in the next book.
A menace to
A
tropes.
menace to trope. No trope is safe. We're gonna accolades for
I
the
approve.
Galvorn saga.
I am very okay with this.
Excellent.
Use it. Make it into
I'm
stickers.
writing it down. I gotta write it down before I forget. That's really funny.
So as you're writing it down, then think about this. We've dug into a lot about like writing tropes and subverting them and stuff like that.
Mhm.
What is your favorite trope when you read books? When you're consuming media, what is one that like it comes along and you're just like, yes.
I love when a little freak saves the day.
What? Elaborate on that, please.
Have you read the
So
Bloodsworn saga?
specific. Bloodsworn Saga, Bloodsworn. That
Hunger of the
is
Gods, Fury of the Gods, Vikings, and it's like
nope.
Pokemon
I'm
meets
thinking of Bloodborne.
Vikings. Um,
No, who's that by?
John Gwynn.
Oh, no, I've heard about it.
Really good.
It's on my list of, like, I need to get to it, but there's just too many books in the world.
No, there are too many books. They're fantastic though.
I've
They're on
heard great things.
Spotify. If you have Spotify Premium, you can listen to them. I'm trying
Oh,
to think of
nice.
another example. The Black Cauldron, I think, is an example. Um,
I know the Black Cauldron.
I love when a character that's been underestimated or is just a little freak, and they have to. There's a degree of freak that has to be present. Like they have to be just off enough. Does
Just a little
something just a
uncomfortable.
little uncomfortable potentially, or just a little too ugly to be like the hero, as horrible as that
Yeah.
sounds, comes in and does something heroic to save the day, especially when it's against their usually established nature.
Okay. And why do you like this show? What draws you to it?
That's a great question. I love I mean it's a subversion of the story. It's a trope that
Mhm.
is a subversion.
That is true. Man, you just really like subverting
I
tropes. No
guess
wonder you
so.
picked this topic. Take the normal and put it on its head.
Yeah.
Uh, besides the chosen one farm boy, is there a particular trope that you're just really tired of seeing?
I think morally gray characters usually aren't actually morally gray. I think that's and it's difficult to really call that a trope or not because I think it's a description that is used so frequently and loosely, just to too broadly, and for too many characters that aren't morally gray. You just want to like them, and so you're saying they're morally gray when they aren't. You know, um, I don't know. It just depends because every in the right hands, any trope can be good. So there aren't any that like the farm boy one, right? I'm trying to think of ones I don't like or that I've tried to. I don't like the strong girl who's just mean, or the badass female character that's just mean, and, like, that's their personality is just being mean, and that doesn't appeal to me. I conversely, I have a character in book 2 who's an orc who's she's a big, strong female character, but, like, she's at her core, she's very kind, because I think that's a lot more interesting, from a storytelling standpoint. List some tropes, help me out.
There's
I
so
don't know,
many,
yeah,
man.
like, that's the thing.
Like I think for me, this one I kind of feel complicated on is enemies to lovers.
Yep, there you go, you got it. Nailed it.
People love throwing that one
Yeah,
out. But I think the problem with it is as soon as you tell me this is enemies to lovers,
right.
you've given it away and I
Yeah.
don't want to read it anymore.
Yeah, and that's part of the marketization of tropes, right? Is I'm fine with tropes, but if you're selling me on like if you're trying to sell me on the trope, I'm less interested in the story. Tell me what the story is. Tropes are tools; they're not the story, in my opinion. And people are making them the story, and that's what frustrates me. Because also, like enemies to lovers, like very rarely are they enemies. Usually, they're just opposed in the works I've read. They're just misunderstanding to lovers. Is like, are you like fundamentally fundamentally on a political and social level enemies? Are you actually enemies or not? Is my question.
That's a good question because that term is thrown out a lot, especially in like romance and romantasy and stuff like
Yeah.
that, which I do like to dip my toe
Sure.
into. I like a good romance every once in a while. But it is thrown out a lot when they are just like rivals for a political position or something like that. The one I'm thinking in particular, and the one that really introduced me to the concept was This Is How You Lose a Time War. Are you familiar with it?
That sounds very familiar.
It was very popular, I wanna say, like, 5 years ago.
Uh-huh.
It's a very short story, I think it's a novella, and it is 2 people on the opposite sides of a time war, like, they're trying to kill each other in the
Yeah.
beginning, and, like, you don't know that going into it, and it's just like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, like
I
in the
was
right
really impressed
hands,
with it.
any trope can be good.
Yeah. That's true. I think another trope that I really enjoy, the latest version that I've read by this is by Adam Fernandez with his Midnight Wars series. It's a sci-fi series. Is just the the martial character who's trying to do better,
Mm.
and you have just pushed him too far.
Oh,
Like he's trying to be a good person,
right.
he's trying to be diplomatic,
Right.
but you're just being too much of a dick right
That's
now,
a good
and
one.
so he's gonna hit you.
That's a good one.
I
I
love
do
that
love
trope.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just very satisfying.
It's very human.
Yeah, because it's like everybody has limits, like even this guy.
Right.
So, do you think there are certain tropes that are in pop words? Do you think they're impossible or unwise to subvert? Like, is any trope sacred?
I would say if it is, then it's something beyond a trope.
What do you mean by that?
Like, your story has to have an ending.
That's true.
You can't subvert that. Is that a trope?
You-
I would say that's not a trope, right?
Agreed.
So, like, when we get to a point where I think we're reaching beyond the r purview of what a trope is, if we're trying to say there are none that can be subverted, right? Because a
Okay.
trope is a
Well,
thing that's been repeated to a point of
yes.
recognizability,
Yes.
right? And so to say that there's nothing that you should, I would say flies in the face of creativity.
That is a good point.
I'm curious
I
if you have an
think
example.
I have one in mind.
Okay.
Not a particular example of it, but a trope that is rarely
Okay,
subverted
rarely.
and to mixed reviews. And it's the good guys win.
Okay. Okay, the good guys win. Interesting.
I think that it's a very broad trope,
Yeah,
but it is one that is very rarely subverted.
sure.
And when it is to very mixed results,
Yeah.
and it has to be handled with a lot of care.
Yeah.
So I would say it has some sanctity to it, to a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't think you can't.
Good point. I am messing with my own question there.
Yeah, it's a high level question, right? Is
That is true.
so like if you do it well enough, I think you
Mhm.
can subvert any trope. You know, because like
Yeah,
mixed reviews, right? The bad guys winning is to mixed reviews because everyone wants a happy ending and stuff. But if the point of the story isn't a happy ending and they've done that, then they potentially, depending on what the author is trying to achieve emotionally, they may have succeeded.
yeah. I think it was about a Joe Abercrombie book
Hmm.
that someone was talking about it, and I don't know which of his books they were talking about, but they're talking about how the ending, how like the bad guys win and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then someone commented underneath it, and they said, "If you expected the good guys to win, I don't think you were paying attention to the book."
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
That's
the kind of thing
grimdark.
that makes me want to. Yeah, yeah.
That's the whole genre.
There are not yeah, there's not a lot of happy endings there,
No.
but people love it. I would say that is a place where that trope does get subverted quite frequently.
Hmm. I think there are certain tropes you can't. Here's what I'll give you. I think there are tropes you can't subvert within certain genres. If you've made a promise to the readers through your genre or your type of story, then
Oh.
potentially you can't subvert those without ruining the whole thing for your readers, right? So if you
Oh,
have,
and that's
I think if
yeah.
you have a romance story that doesn't have a happy ending, then it is no longer a romance story. And so by subverting that trope, you have lied to your audience and you have separated yourself from the point of the story and you have undermined what you're doing.
That's true. So it is a little bit of a danger to subvert your tropes too far
Yeah.
or to subvert certain tropes based on the promises that you have made to your
Yeah, I
audience.
think it's genre and story specific. I don't think there's one trope that can't ever be subverted, but there are certain tropes within certain groupings that shouldn't be if they
Yeah,
want
because
to
otherwise
remain.
you're not in that group
Yep.
anymore. Okay. So if romance is you have to have a happy ending, which I agree, you definitely do. What would you say is fantasy's trope that you cannot subvert? I know fantasy is very broad. We can narrow it
Yeah,
down
that's
to
the
a
thing, right?
subgenre.
So yeah, and you would have to
Like,
narrow it down to
yeah.
subgenres, right?
Yeah. So it's like we were saying with grimdark fantasy, you cannot subvert like it can't be a bright and happy ending.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's a good ending, it can't be. It someone has to be scarred.
Yeah.
At the very least, someone has to be permanently worse off than when the story started. I would say, or
Okay.
in that vein.
So ongoing with your series, then, is there a particular trope that you're really looking forward to incorporating and or subverting that you haven't already?
Trying to think of something that isn't like a massive spoiler.
I know that that is a dangerous question, and that is fine. You can take your time to answer it, or we can move on. I
We
understand that I've put a lot of pressure on you
No,
on this one.
you're good because I want to talk about my other stuff because I don't get to talk about it much because it's not out. Our series up until this point, or through book one, there isn't a
Yeah,
primary antagonist.
correct. There's
There's
hints,
hints of a
but never
primary
anything
antagonist, but
definitive.
there's no definitive primary antagonist, which I really enjoy in that story element because it leaves a room for a lot of world building and you have different levels of antagonists and stuff. I think that is a dangerous thing to do within the realm of fantasy because traditionally
Hmm.
fantasy has the Dark Lord. We have a character who is that darker, that big bad. Our big bad isn't the original Dark Lord, right?
Hmm.
um, and they're a character I'm very excited to subvert some tropes with. We are going to have a big bad,
Ooh,
but our big bad isn't the ultimate evil, but they're still the big bad for the story. They're a
that
world
makes sense.
threatening villain, but I think they're a very interesting world threatening villain.
More personal is the vibe I'm getting at.
It's very personal if you've met my characters. It's
Oh,
extremely
okay.
personal if you've met my characters.
Oh, the cogs are going through now. I'm trying to do some thinking and figuring out what's going to be happening next. But yeah, in your first story, there isn't really a BBEG, a big bad end
Mhm.
game. The villain or the antagonist is survival. It's
Right.
the world. It's man versus environment.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. It's man versus everything.
Yeah.
It's man versus nature, it's man versus environment, it's man versus man.
Yeah. Which again leans into like the apocalyptic tropes that you were talking about earlier with Fallout meets Lord of the Rings. We're
Right.
coming full circle. It works out. So then what advice would you give newer writers who want to subvert tropes but without turning the story into a gimmick?
What is your goal? Figure out what your goal is. Why are you subverting the trope? Why is the trope there in the first place? Usually if you have a trope in your story and you're not writing for that trope, but you have that trope because you're writing a story, then it's there for a reason. And so what's the reason behind your subversion, right? So most of the subversion of tropes in our story in the Galvorn saga is with the intention of making this story fresh and the characters and the fantasy elements fresh, right? Make them unique to the world. From the elves being a warrior race to like the dwarves using knowledge as like currency and stuff, or even our dwarves having Russian accents instead of the typical like Scottish or Irish accents is an intentional subversion, right? So what is the purpose of subverting? If you're subverting it just to subvert it, I think your audience will recognize that and it will hurt your credibility.
Okay, so you're saying subversion should have a purpose.
Yes, absolutely. That purpose can
Okay.
vary from just freshen things to humor to it can be a broader reason or a more microcosmic reason.
Okay. But you're cautioning against really just being different for the sake of different.
Absolutely.
I can see that because when you're doing it just for the sake of different, pretty much just adding more work for yourself and the reader
Mhm.
to kind of constantly remember it's this, but it's not the whole of this
Right.
for no reason.
And if you keep doing it over and over, your readers are probably gonna feel robbed.
Yeah,
I'm a
like
big
you were
I'm a
saying with
big
the
component of your readers should never feel like you were trying to trick them.
I agree. I am not a big fan of when an author intentionally hides information blatantly from the reader. I think it's cheap.
It's cheating.
If you have to do it, it is. It is. It blatantly is. Especially when you're in like a tight POV
Mhm.
where you've been in the character's kind of head for a while, and then suddenly like, and he thought of a plan. What? What's the plan? He
Yeah,
knows it. I should know it.
right,
Yeah.
right. There's very specific circumstances in which you can do that, and it's pretty much only
Yes.
heists. And then it needs
Yeah.
to be like a
Yeah.
visual medium, otherwise
It's also like that's part of the genre.
Right,
Like
exactly.
if you're subverting that trope, you're getting away from the genre.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that works.
So we've talked a lot about like character tropes and some genre tropes. Trying to think, what is a genre trope that man you just have so many in your story because you blend so many different things together. It's hard to really pinpoint it
Mhm.
for this book. This is a really good subject for yours. I see why you picked it for Paragon Exordio.
Thank you, thank you.
Like the whole book is just, hey, have you read fantasy before? Have you read dystopian? Now here's something completely different but familiar.
Yeah, and I wanted we wanted it to be a good gateway fantasy. Right? So, like, we wanted it to be a gateway
Huh.
fantasy, but also a fantasy that fantasy readers will enjoy. It's a fantasy book for everyone. If you haven't read fantasy, it's a really good starter because it's set in our world. So half the stuff is familiar and we've got familiar names and we ease you into the fantasy stuff. Right. If
Yeah.
you've read fantasy, you can be like, ooh, I recognize that and I recognize that. Ooh, and there's an alicorn and I know what that is, and I'm excited by that.
Mhm. But if you're new to the whole fantasy too, like you can just show up and just be like, I vaguely know what an elf is. I've seen Lord of the
Right.
Rings. Most people have. Yeah. Man. And you guys went into the story doing this intentionally?
Oh yeah.
Wow. You guys really did want to just write a story that was for everyone, like for age groups and for genre.
Yep.
It kind of reminds me of like Avatar: The Last Airbender and Full Metal Alchemist,
Hmm.
as they are like anime for people who have never really watched anime.
Right. And you
And
know
now
what?
this is fantasy for people who don't read
And you
fantasy.
know another fun thing about those is they're for children,
Mhm.
but they're well
Oh my
done.
god, they're so good.
And that's
Like,
that's my thing is a story can be for children, but if it's well done, it's not just for children.
yeah. Well, that's because the lessons like you can learn from like tropes and subverting tropes and in stories in general, like if they're handled well,
Yep.
they're universally true. Like,
Yes.
yes, you may learn this when you are 12, but some people don't learn this until they're 32.
Yeah. And handling it well
Yeah.
is the key, right? And you mentioned two phenomenal examples between Avatar: The Last Airbender and Full Metal Alchemist. Handle it beautiful. Complex subjects, dark subjects, genocide is a
Yeah.
major element of both those stories, and they're well
Oh yeah.
handled. And they're
Oh yeah.
examined from a broad perspective, but also the micro perspective of how it affects the individuals. And the key is just writing good characters.
I know we're on a bit of a tangent right now, but I'm 100% here for it. Like, this is good stuff.
Absolutely.
Those are some of like my favorite bits of media. Absolutely. So I will say, we have gotten through like all of my prepared questions, and that never happens.
Nice.
I'm very impressed. But that being said, like we did talk about like your favorite trope being like the little freak that saves the day.
Yeah.
Um, are there certain tropes that you've ran into that you love it in this genre, but you hate it in another one?
Oh, love it in this genre, but hate it in another. I need to read more genres. Um,
Oh, are you exclusively fantasy?
no, I read sci-fi too.
Okay, space fantasy.
Space, yeah, yeah, pretty much. I mean, I read
No,
other stuff.
I hear you.
I've read noir stuff. I've read thriller stuff. It's just those are my primary areas that I focus in on. I'm trying to think of some examples of like it in one and not in another. Um,
Hmm.
hmm,
I would say the almost obligatory romantic subplot
mm,
is not always in service of the story. I
yeah,
don't think every story needs one.
I agree.
I'm not sure if that counts as a trope, but I'm throwing that out there as an example.
No, I mean, I can see it. I can see that. Yeah, romance doesn't belong in every story. Here's the thing: romance is a part of every world, but
Yes.
it's not a part of every story.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's in a lot of stories though, because it is a major component of most people's lives.
Yeah, it is.
Either like the seeking of it or fostering of it. Like
Yeah, and I mean,
relationships are a big deal.
in Paragon Exordium, there's no romance, right?
Mhm.
There's like a C plot romance, right? Um, but it's not the focus because the story it's about an apocalypse, and in an apocalypse, there's not really time for romance. And so the
Yeah.
interesting thing about that is the not converse the antithesis of that is you have the characters that aren't in every chapter fighting for their lives are the ones who get a romantic subplot, right?
Mm.
Because they have the room and the space for that. But even that, I didn't go into the story with the intention of writing. That developed weirdly naturally. It just happened as the characters were engaging with each other.
I have a guess on who they are because you said it's a C plot, so I'm assuming it doesn't happen that much in book one. But I have a
Go
guess.
for it.
I'm horrible with character names, so I I am not going to
It's
go for
Stephen
it.
and Sarah in book one.
Okay, it
Yeah.
is exactly who I thought
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was.
And as the story progresses, we're going to see more romantic elements because things shift. Right. And so,
Okay.
like book two, there's characters that there's a romantic element of because they're two very physically capable characters in a environment where there's not a whole lot of other people for a long time. And so
Mhm.
there are sparks that are going to fly because their personalities match just inherently. So it was a thing where it's like, well, in this setting, that's going to happen because that's a natural part of life and character development and stuff. And so it is a component of the story now.
No, that makes sense. So with tropes and subverting tropes, then this may get into like whether you are a plotter or a pantser.
Mm,
Actually, uh, do you go into the story, into the book, going like, I know I'm going to use this trope and I know I'm going to subvert it? Or does it happen organically where you're writing and you recognize, oh, I'm discovering this trope on the page,
yeah.
but it is different.
It's both. It's both. It's we don't plan for a lot of tropes because we have, and see, this is the thing is I've got an outline for sure. So I'm a planner, and I'm that's the neat thing about being a co-author and having a co-author relationship is we do so much of both things. So we have like a general outline we're following, but like with book two, that we have the main points we want to get to. It's the journey to those points is where things shift and are fluid and flexible, right? So in book two, we have a character who are like, well, our plan is for this and this, and I was like, okay, but they're gonna just try and go kill that person. Like it's an apocalypse. This is the only choice that makes sense for this character, and there's no reason this character wouldn't try and do something. So now it becomes a well, how do we? What do we do now? Because this has to happen because of the character we've written and how that plays into the story. And it has developed into some of my favorite elements of the story and how it folds out. And we still have our end goals that we're building up and setting up for, but now there's rivers that flow alongside and weave back into it in a way that we didn't expect.
So you really just let the characters lead you to these unexpected situations, despite the fact that you have a plan and they're not listening.
That's the funny thing. No, it's the first time this has happened. Usually,
Oh,
like up until that point, whenever someone's like, "Oh yeah, my characters are making the decisions," I'm like, "What are you talking about? You're the author. You're making the decisions." And then
yeah,
the character became its own thing outside the plot, and it's like, it's are you approaching the story or are you approaching the characters,
yeah.
right? And if your characters are well written enough, at a certain point, that affects how the story plays out. If you're
No, that
consistent,
makes sense. Yeah. No, that is definitely a very shocking moment the first time you ever run into it, where it's like you've created this person who is not real.
right?
They are a figment of your imagination, and you have made decisions for them, and they just turn up from the page and just go, "No."
Yeah,
Like, what?
yeah.
I made you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right, I could control you, but it wouldn't serve the story.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there are times where I have leaned into that where I'm just like, the plot needs you to do this.
Yeah,
And I need to think of a reason
right.
to justify that. But there have been other times where they just go like, no, this doesn't make sense. I would not do this.
Yeah.
I would do this instead, and it's cooler.
Which is a
That's the
trope
hope, at least.
as a writer, that's a writer trope.
We've come
There
full
we go, I
circle.
gotcha.
There we go. And that's going to be a perfect time to start wrapping up this episode. Uh, Michael, could you please tell the people where can they find you? Where can they find your book?
I am everywhere as Michael Melwasul, Mikelm. I forgot how to spell my own name.
It will be
Melwasu.
underneath you at the
It's
bottom,
also
I
like in
promise.
4 different places in front of me on my own books. Anyway, I'm the same person everywhere. I'm most active on TikTok and Threads and Instagram. I do game streaming on YouTube and Twitch sometimes. My books are available literally anywhere you can find books. Paragon Exordium's on Kindle Unlimited. The audiobook is on Audible. Paragon Apocrypha will be wider as far as audio goes, and that will be coming out later this year. I've got a newsletter, the whole shebang. Just Google Michael Melwassel, you'll find me on your preferred platform.
He is everywhere, people. Sign up for his newsletter. But anyways, thank you for coming on to the show, Michael. Thank you for coming on last week
Oh,
as well. This has been really fun. I really appreciate it. It's
you're
been a lot
very
of fun.
welcome. May you walk under blue skies.
Oh, you hit me with it, people. It's good.
We mentioned
Actually,
the menu. We didn't explain it at all.
that's all right. We're just gonna leave it there. They're gonna have to pick up that nugget, read the book, and find out.
There we go.
That's perfect. That's where we're gonna leave it right there. Actually, have a good day, folks. Oh my god, that was a mess at the end, but I appreciate you sticking that out.
Yeah, man, no problem.